Body. As I've said to even the Torah this year, it is weird to meet people on Zoom. Like for the first time to meet a group of people on Zoom, it's obviously more ideal to meet face to face, and I hope Bezrat Hashem one day we can meet face to face, and look forward to meeting all of you. Second thing that I always say to a group of British chevra is if you don't understand my accent, because apparently I've got a very, very strong South African accent. So if you don't understand my accent, just tell me to slow down and I'll slow down with absolute pleasure. That's number two. And number three, I found this absolutely amazing. Remarkable that you guys are learning 8 o'clock at night your time, 10 o'clock our time here in Israel. And I think it really shows the power of you guys and the power of UK. And it's wonderful to see a Beit Midrash continue online. It's not a simple thing, but really kol hakavod to everybody. I think it's something special you can be proud of, especially and something I can take and show the rest of the world, something to take from you guys. Just to point, yes, my tough kids at the moment in World B'nai Akiva is Torani. I've got the privilege of being the director of Torani program, which I had the merit of speaking to them on Zoom a couple of weeks ago. And I hope, please God, as soon as things start opening up a little bit more here, I'll get to see them more face to face. And then the second half of the job is the MTA program, which is the South African and Australian program. So please God, the whole Commonwealth comes together, and we look forward to hopefully meeting most of you in the future. If possible, if I could share screen. I don't know if you let me share screen, whoever is. Brilliant. Yes, great. So I'm going to share my screen with you. I hope you can all see it. And apparently, you know, we're Erev Shabbos. We're going into Shabbos. And I don't know if you have minyanim there at the moment, outdoor minyanim or not, but I remember in the 6-month lockdown that we had in South Africa, for 6 months, we didn't have a minyan. And I remember one of the challenges that it was actually connecting to Kriyat Torah, to the reading of the Torah, to the parasha of the week. I enjoyed being at home with a family and in a close-knit bubble, but at the same time, I didn't have that feeling of going to shul and reading the Torah and hearing the Torah. And it's something that actually I learned to appreciate during lockdown. So one of the ideas that they say of why we prepare and do Shnai Mikra, I don't know if you've heard of that mitzvah, but that mitzvah that you read the parasha twice with an explanation, a translation, one of the reasons they give is that you prepared for the parasha. You're prepared for what you're about to go into. So I hope tonight gives you a little taste of the parasha, a little taste of the end of the parasha. And please God that you should take a message with you into Shabbos. Maybe you can share it at your tables tomorrow night. You can share it with your friends, families, and so on and so forth. So the big concept that comes up in this week's parasha, that we've all heard, there's no question that you haven't heard this concept, is Naaseh v'Nishma. That when we received the Torah, we got the concept of Naaseh v'Nishma. What does it mean? That Hashem said to us, and the Midrash tells us that he went to every nation and will they accept the Torah? And they all said, no, we can't do this. And the Jewish people, he got to and they said, Naaseh v'Nishma, we'll do it. And then we will hear. Famous concept, which in some way you can think about is blind faith. That we went in blind faith into accepting the Torah. Now, if you were writing the Sefer Torah, if you were writing the Torah, if you had to be so brazen to write the Sefer Torah, where would you put Naaseh v'Nishma? I would have put it at the end of last week's parasha, or even before the 10 Commandments. Let's call it that way, just before the 10 Commandments in Parashat Yitro. I would put Naaseh v'Nishma, then boom, hit us with the 10 Commandments, and that makes chronological order in a sense of the Torah. But where do we see Naaseh v'Nishma? We see Naaseh v'Nishma, this whole concept that we accepted the Torah, right at the end of Mishpatim. In the last aliyah of Mishpatim, the last bit of Mishpatim, and I'll teach you a little trick which is quite cool to remember, and it maybe will fit in with my Dvar Torah. Does anyone know the pasuk that it's found in? It's found in Chaf Daled, which is 24, pasuk Zayin, which is 7. So 24/7 we have Naaseh v'Nishma in our lives. Hey, how cool is that? Anyway, so that's the pasuk of right at the end of the parasha. We can see over here, and you can see the first source. Moshe Amar Alei Hashem, and going up the mountain, Aaron, Nadav, Aviv, Shivim, Mizignei Shol, and so on and so forth. And if you jump right to the end, it says, Vayikach Sefer Abrit, you take this Sefer Abrit, this covenant, Vayikra Boznei Ha'am, and you call it out to the people of the nation, Vayomru, and they said, Tiber Hashem, Naseh v'nishma. And the whole nation said, Naseh v'nishma. We will do, and then we will listen. So again, the question again, why is it at the end of Mishpatim? It should be at the beginning of just before we receive the Torah, as we're preparing to receive the Torah, Naseh v'nishma, boom, receive the Torah, and everything makes sense. That's the question. So the simple answer that you could answer to me, and it's a famous and well-known concept and debate and machloket amongst the Mefashim of the Torah, is a concept of Ein Mukdam U'Mauchar b'Torah. Is there chronological order in the Torah or not? So Rashi says straight away on this passage over here, and it's a simple answer, and it makes sense according to Rashi. And then you could say everything's Shalom al Yisrael, everything's amazing, Kol HaKavod, because he says Parsha Zo Nemra Kodem Aseret HaDibrot. Rashi says very simply that this Parsha was said before the Ten Commandments. So don't stress everybody. It was said before. The Torah is not in chronological order, and that's another shiur maybe. Why is it not in chronological order? It makes more sense to say that it was in chronological order. Why is it not in chronological order? So Rashi says straight away, there's definitely many phases in Chazal that teach you that it's not in chronological order, and the Torah doesn't seem to be in chronological order, and therefore what is really going on here actually comes before Matan Torah, before we receive the Torah. So the obvious question then on Rashi would be, okay, so why is it here? And maybe we will answer that in a moment. The second opinions that are out there is that there is chronological order in the Torah. So if there is chronological order in the Torah, and the Ramban and many others talk about how there is chronological order in the Torah, and he brings at the end of the Ramban, he actually brings that there is this debate about chronological order. And it says, Shenichlaku b'davar, Yeshamru shaya kodem matan Torah b'chamishi. That's what we saw, that it actually happened before Matan Torah. And then he says, and he taught them all these things. Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda, Amar bo b'yom nasu kol ha'masim, kolomar bo b'yom la'achar Matan Torah nasu ha'masim shel sipur and Sefer Abrit. He says, and this is the machloket that you can see in the Mechilta, that no, really, where was Naseh v'nishma? It was after we received the Torah. And if it was after we received the Torah, then what's the bichab? What's so great about Naseh v'nishma then? So there is this debate: is it before? Is it after? Is it before? Is it after? If it's after, if it happened before, okay, it makes sense. Then the obvious question is, well, why didn't you just put it before? Why didn't you place it that way? But if it's after, then why is it after? Doesn't make sense then. Then the whole chap and the whole greatness of Naseh v'nishma doesn't necessarily make sense. So I want to present you my answer. It's my personal understanding of it. I haven't seen it written anywhere. I've built it in my own head, and it's a few ideas that some of these ideas you may have heard, but I bring it together to answer this question. So if you look at Mishpatim, it starts with a conjunction, starts with and. And these are the laws that are placed before you. Now it's a very interesting way to start a parasha, and you normally start it without a conjunction. So why does it start with and? So Rashi comes and tells you, it's a well-known. Rashi says, it actually comes to add. If it was just the word eile without the vav, it would actually come to cancel out. There's no connection. But when there's a vav, va'eile, it actually comes to add on to the first things, the first what we've had. And it says, Ma rishonim Sinai, af eile Sinai. And he says, wow, just as the Ten Commandments were taught at Mount Sinai, at Har Sinai, so too all these things in Mishpatim were taught at Har Sinai. Now, what's the difference between Yitro and Mishpatim? There's a very simple difference. Yitro, and I'll say it like this, and forgive me for people that don't have my analogy, but Yitro is like being at Old Trafford or at Wembley or at Lord's, whichever you want to be at, pumping stadium, full packed crowd, 600,000 people stocked in there, fireworks, thunder, lightning, amazing concert, amazing game, whatever it is. That was the atmosphere of Matan Torah. It was a huge spectacle. It was one of the greatest events that ever happened in history. The Kuzari talks about it, that's why Judaism has to be true, because it talks about how 600,000 people were witnessing it. And who writes a book if it's a fake book? on 600 of people, of 600,000 people who heard the Torah. That wouldn't make sense if there weren't 600,000 people there. So it was a huge event. It was actually probably one of the most inspiring events. So inspiring that Hashem had to not give any more of the 10 commandments. He only gave 2 because we couldn't handle it. It was so inspiring. So therefore Moshe gave the last week. But it was a huge event. Must have been a huge event. If you put it in modern days, it was one of the biggest concerts that you could ever have gone to. Very inspiring. That's Yitro. But what's Mishpatim? So if you've done your reading of the Parsha already, Mishpatim, sorry to say it this way, but could be considered one of the more boring parashot. One of the more like, oh my gosh, what happens if I damage? What happens if I've got a slave? What happens if all the mundane laws, Shemitah, all of these laws, mundane laws that happen from when you wake up in the morning till you go to bed, the interactions with people, shomer chinam, shomer sachar, guarding, somebody else should take responsibility for property, and that's what you find in the Sutta Parsha. So you go from this absolute high of Matan Torah, this absolute wow of an event, to this, oh my gosh, damages, guarding, X, Y, and Z. And it's our servants, what happens here, and so on and so forth. So it goes from this absolute high to this absolute low, and some could say pretty boring. Pretty boring. So what's the connection? And we see there's a connection because the verb comes to connect them. And the reality is, and maybe you've heard this idea before, but that if we base our Judaism on Yitro, on the Matan Torah, on just the exciting events all the time, you'll never succeed. You'll never succeed because life doesn't work that way. We can't live that high spiritual experience 24/7. And some of you may have experienced it before, where you have an absolute high. You walk out of a shiur, you walk out of an event, a Beit Midrash session, whatever it is, and you feel, wow, spiritually uplifted. And then you wake up the next morning, and it's gone. I'm sure it's happened to all of you before. It's definitely happened to me before. There's no question about it. And that's life. It's like a roller coaster. You go through ups and downs. And the challenge that we live is to continue the ups as best as possible and to work to keep that going. But I read a study a few years back that if you look at the most successful people in life, and you take anyone, whether it's in business, whether it's in sports, whether it's in Torah, whatever tchum, whichever avenue you want to look at a successful person, you know what the common denominator between a successful people is? Consistency. Consistency in their daily actions. The small things that happen when they wake up in the morning, from their little gym exercise in the morning to the way they get dressed, to how they conduct themselves in the office, X, Y, and Z, that consistency creates success. And what the Torah is teaching you here is that really to be successful in Judaism, you have to be continuous. You've got to do it every single day, every single night, even if you're not so passionate about it. So you can wake up in the morning, you're not so excited to daven, but you know what, you do it anyway, because you know that's part of it. And through that routine comes the real service of Hashem, comes the real service of what Judaism is about. And that's what Mishpatim is teaching you, laws. All the mundane laws, from when you wake up in the morning till you go to bed, that's true Judaism. The Yitro is nice, it's good. The Matan Torah is a good experience. And the important parts of our life, the important experiences that we have within our lives. But really the realistic and the most important part that makes you a true and fulfilling Jew is the Mishpatim that you do every single day of your life, from when you wake up in the morning till you go to bed. How you conduct yourselves with your families, with your friends, with everything around you, whether it's university, whether it's marriage, whatever part of your life that comes to your house, your children, X, Y, and Z, that all is the meat and potatoes of your Judaism. And that's the connection, is that you take that inspirational moments of Matan Torah and you feed it into your every single day life. And you have to try and keep it up within that consistency. Okay, so now how does this now explain Naaseh V'Nishma? How does this connect to Naaseh V'Nishma? Because it's a nice idea that you put it into practice, into your lives, that the consistency will hopefully bring you meaning. The challenge and the flip side of that is that sometimes when you're too routine, you become like a robot and then there's no meaning whatsoever. So within that consistency, you have to keep reminding yourself that there's got to be purpose and meaning, and that's why sometimes you need that Matan Torah event to keep you inspired or to reignite that fire. And those are important moments in a life, and maybe that's for another shit to create Matan Torahs within your life, everything at different stages, not every single day, not every single moment, because that's not normal, but to create it within the routine to spice up the routine. So that's an important moment. So how does this fit into Naasev Nishma? And how do we understand Naasev Nishma? So is Naasev Nishma just blind faith? Were the Jewish people just blind faith and said yes, 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 yes? I struggle with that. And I'll tell you why I struggle with that. For one simple reason, and again, this is my own idea, can take it or leave it. The parsha before Yitro is Beshalach. Now, if there's one word that defines Beshalach, in my opinion, is human psychology. Why? And I'll explain. If you look at Beshalach, Beshalach is one of the most crazy parashot you'll come across. Wow, we have the most unbelievable miracle that ever happened to the Jewish people. We saw the splitting of the sea. The splitting of the sea happened, as they say, one of the greatest miracles known in the history of humankind. We walked through the sea. Now, if that happened to you today, if you tonight, straight after this, saw splitting of the sea, would you believe in Hashem? Of course you'd believe in Hashem. I would believe in Hashem. I mean, there's no question, and I should be inspired to believe in Hashem. But what are the psukim straight after we split the sea and we sing and Az Yashem Moshe and everybody is singing and dancing? Literally, the psukim straight after it's Vayilonu. They complain, not enough water. Then they complain about the meat. How's that possible? Hashem just did the greatest miracles. You saw open miracles with your own eyes of Hashem, and yeah, all of a sudden you go and you complain, because that's human nature. We inspired, we motivated, we see the hand of Hashem in certain areas in our life, and then the next moment that inspiration's gone and we complain. There's a positive to it, not for now. If you look at our Veilut, there's a positive to this emotional trait, but we'll leave it there for now. So therefore, if the Jewish people were complaining and couldn't last without the water, and they couldn't enjoy the man, do you think they blindly accepted the Torah? I find it difficult. That's a kashya that I will leave in my own head to the side. So therefore, what does Naasev Nishma mean? And I think this will explain maybe why it's at the end of Mishpatim. I think Naasev Nishma means like this. Okay? Oh, sorry, just to connect earlier the whole thing of the Elia Mishpatim and this whole inspirational moment. And what do we see right at the end of Parashat Yitro that literally comes before Mishpatim is this whole concept that we brought a korban. I won't read it inside, but we brought a korban. We set a mizbeach. We built a mizbeach and the ramp. And you know the famous thing that had to be a ramp, not stairs. Why? So Rashi says because of tzniut, it needed to be tzniut. So this altar that they bought, this mizbeach that they built, had to be a ramp, and that's what we have in the Beit HaMikdash. Please God soon. We had a ramp. So why ramp? So we said because it's tzniut. So I've heard a nice Hasidic idea on the why the ramp, because if you walk up do you call it an escalator in England? I'm hoping, the escalator. Okay, you call it an escalator. Great. So an escalator, if you try to go up an escalator that's coming down, what will happen if you stop? You're going to fall down. You're going to go all the way down. I'm sure you've all tried it. Well, I tried it when I was a kid. So if you want to get to the top, you've got to move. You've got to keep moving, and it's hard work. And you've got to, as it's going down, you've got to keep going up at a real pace. And that, I think, is the message of the altar, is that, yes, if you think that you reached it because you had Matan Torah, that you had that inspirational moment, you're just going to go down. You've got to keep moving and pushing and working hard and working hard and working harder and harder and harder. And that's when you can really achieve. So that's maybe the message of the altar, which connects Mishpatim to Yitro. But I want to give you my idea of Naasev Nishma, which will tie this all together. How do we understand Naasev Nishma? We will do, and then we will hear. That's what we say. But I want to try to prove that maybe the word Shema, Nishma, doesn't necessarily mean hear. So there's a famous Gemara in Brachot that talks about, do you have to have, do mitzvot need kavana or not? Do you have to have intentions? Every time you do a mitzvah, I'm about to eat machala on Friday night. Do I have to have intention that I'm eating the challah for mitzvah of the shnei lechem, or, X, Y, and Z. So we, I'm going to the actual sugya, but it talks about Shema. Do we have to have intention when we read the Shema in the day? Or day and night, the 2-3 times that we say the Shema. And there's a whole discussion about it. But the Chachamim Omrim, and this is where I'll jump here if you can see my thing, Chachamim Omrim b'chol lashon. You can read the Shema in any language. My timer, the Rabbi Yehuda. Oh, sorry. Yeah, why Taima? Vayubi atan yuba rabbanan okay, my tamayu. Wait, yeah. So the whole idea that the rabbis say is that you can read it in your own language, b'chol lashon. Why? Because Shema, there's a whole debate. Do you have to hear it? Meaning, do you have to say verbally that Shema, you hear it? Or is it that you understand it? B'chol lashon, in any language. So I want to understand and I want to suggest that maybe the Nishma doesn't mean hear, it means understand. That Naaseh, when you do something, then you'll come to understand it. That's when you'll truly come to appreciate it. And I'll give you a few examples to explain what I'm saying. I'll say two examples. I like golf. I don't know if any of you like golf and playing golf. You probably think I'm crazy, but I like playing golf. Now, when I watch golf, and I like to watch golf, so I can sit and watch, I don't know, the Augustus or whatever opens there are, and I can watch the golf PGA and enjoy it. And some of my mates think I'm crazy. Why would you want to watch golf? It's the most boring sport. Boring. Right, and even you speak to, I don't know if you speak to an American group and you talk about cricket, they think you're nuts. They think it's the most boring sport in the world. But really, we can appreciate it. So why can we appreciate cricket? Because we've played cricket, or we experience cricket. So I know it's a stupid example, but it's the same thing with golf. Once you've played golf, you can appreciate what golf really is. And when the golfers are hitting their shots, you say, wow, I can appreciate that. I understand now. Wow, what a shot. So really what I'm trying to suggest, and I think it's a lesson dafka in informal education as well, is that Naaseh v'nishma, how do you actually come to learn something? When you do it. When you do it, that's when you come to learn it. That's when you really understand it, should I say it that way. And I'll give you, let's say, a Torah example. I remember learning like Hilchot Shabbos. You know, everyone, when they teach Hilchot Shabbos, for some reason, they start with bishul, cooking. So you learn about a kli rishon and a kli sheni and a this and a plakta and a that. And I remember thinking, I'm such a tzaddik, I know all these halachot. And when I got married, I remember the first Shabbos sitting at home, and now I'm sitting there going, oh my gosh, is the soup kli rishon, kli sheni? I had no cooking clue, excuse the pun, of what to do. I had no idea what to do. And only when I started realizing in action what to do and putting it on this platter and a bit raised and a kli rishon is this and a kli sheni is that in action, did I really understand it. And I think that could be the meaning of Naaseh v'nishma, is that when you do it and you put it into practice, then you'll have a deeper understanding. Then we will understand what to do, and then we can appreciate the Torah in a more deep way. So now, why is it at the end of Mishpatim? The end of Mishpatim, because Naaseh, we've just done it. Well, we've seen the laws. Now we know what to do every single day. When we wake up in the morning till we go to bed at night, we know what to do, how to behave. The mundane laws that we experienced after the Hav Matan Torah, those mundane laws, now that I've done them, and now that I know what to do if I bump somebody's car, or I know what to do when I'm guarding somebody's object for them, I know what to do in this situation every single moment, a pet, whatever it is, Nishma. Now that I've done it, Nishma, can understand it. And I think that could be the real understanding of Naaseh v'nishma, and that could be the reason of why it's at the end of Mishpatim, not before Matan Torah. Because yes, we may have wanted sort of gone in blind faith, and some say that definitely it was blind faith, but maybe the true meaning of Naaseh v'nishma, the true reason it's at the end of Mishpatim, is because when I do it, then I'll come to understand it. So I think it's a beautiful lesson in life in general, that when you practice something, when you do something, that's when you truly will appreciate it and understand it. And you have a true appreciation for it. So sometimes, like Tisha B'Av, for example, is such a hard day to feel, because we've never experienced the Beit HaMikdash. None of us have brought a korban in our life. So how do we feel the pain of something like that? Because you've never experienced it. But other events, you can, like the Holocaust, or even your Matzmaut, Yom Yerushalayim, we love it. It's such an experience. Why? Because we've been to Israel. We know what it means to us. We can see it with our eyes. We've experienced it. And I'll say, just for those of you that are madrichim, madrichotim, b'nei Akiva, it's the same thing. True education is when you do something with your chanichim, they truly remember it. That's a pu'ulah, if you think about it. A pu'ulah is teaching. You can take the most deep Torah concept, or the most deep concept in thought, whatever it is, and you put it into a pu'ulah, which is a discussion, an action, a movie, whatever it is, and they'll truly understand, and you'll never forget it from there more than if they learned it in a sefer. So maybe that's the understanding of Na'aseh B'Nishma. Maybe that's the reason that it's there. And I wish a bracha, all of you, that going into the Shabbat, Bezrat Hashem, you should have consistency in your life. And you should have meaning in your life and purpose. And you should take the experience of Matan Torah and put it into every single moment that you live, every single moment from the moment you wake up in the morning till you go to bed. And Bezrat Hashem, you'll truly live a life of Na'aseh B'Nishma. Thank you for having me. Please, God, one day to be live in person, and just have a wonderful Shabbat Shalom ahead.
Thank you so much, Rav Kaplan.